In this video, we will follow each trace, from the 1930s all the way to the present, to unravel one of the most enduring and unsettling mysteries on American soil, the story of Skinwalker Ranch. So fasten your seatbelt as we dive into today's mystery. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. In the northeastern reaches of the state of Utah, where quiet mountain ranges cradle dry plains and sparse forests stretch endlessly into the horizon, lies a region that has been whispered about by locals for hundreds of years. Unlike any other place in America, this harsh basin is known not only for its wild and untamed beauty, but for the startling number of supernatural phenomena reported within its borders. This is the Uinta Basin. From unidentified lights drifting silently across the night sky, to bizarre entities that appear half human and half beast, from inexplicable cold winds that seem to rise out of nowhere, to strange rhythmic sounds echoing from beneath the earth, the Uinta Basin is a place where mystery walks hand in hand with the present. According to informal surveys, as many as 3/4 of the people who live in this area admit to having witnessed something they could not explain. For them, the strange is simply a part of life. And if the Uinta Basin is a hub of the unexplainable, then Skinwalker Ranch is its beating heart. For decades, locals have referred to this place by a name that evokes fear and ancient dread, because they believe this land is cursed by entities known as skinwalkers. These are malevolent shapeshifters from Navajo legend, being said to take on the forms of animals to stalk and terrorize human beings. According to the legend, after an ancient conflict, the Navajo placed a curse on this land as retribution against the Ute tribe. Since then, the Ute have believed they must never set foot on Skinwalker Ranch, for it lies directly within the Path of the Skinwalker, a corridor between worlds where shadowy beings move freely from one realm to another. In the spring of 1994, when Terry and Gwen Sherman signed the papers to purchase a ranch nestled deep within the remote Uinta Basin, they had no idea they were stepping into a nightmare beyond imagination. For them, this 480-acre stretch of land was a dream, a place to build a life, raise cattle, and enjoy the quiet peace of the countryside. But within just hours of moving in, that dream began to unravel in a way no one could have anticipated. On their very first day, while the family was still unloading their belongings from the truck, a massive creature appeared from the southern edge of the field and slowly made its way toward them. At first, it looked like a wolf, but as it drew closer, Terry realized it was nearly 3 times the size of any wolf he had ever seen. It moved slowly, with eyes of deep blue that seemed to pierce straight into one's thoughts. Strangely, it showed no aggression. In fact, it even allowed Terry's father to stroke its thick, damp fur without resistance. But just seconds later, that calm was shattered. In a sudden, lightning-fast motion, the creature lunged and clamped its jaws around the head of a young calf that had been peeking out of its pen, attempting to drag it out. Terry panicked, unable to believe what he was seeing. He grabbed a club and struck the creature, then fired multiple rounds from his .357 Magnum at close range. Incredibly, the bullets seemed to have no effect. Finally, after switching to a high-powered rifle and firing several more shots, the creature slowly retreated. It left behind a strip of flesh that reeked of decay, as though it had been dead for days. In the weeks that followed, strange phenomena began to surround the Sherman family in ways they were wholly unprepared for. Gwen noticed that household items, from grocery bags to personal belongings, would disappear and then reappear in odd places. One day, she stepped out of the bathroom for just a few minutes, only to return and find her towel and toothbrush missing. Hours later, they were discovered in bizarre spots, such as the middle of the staircase or inside a bedroom closet. At first, Gwen doubted her own memory, but when Terry lost a 70-pound soil probe, only to find it later wedged high in the branches of a tree over 60 feet tall, both he and Gwen were forced to accept that something, or someone, was toying with them. The longer they lived on the land, the more mysterious events they encountered. Flickering lights drifted along the northern fence line at night. Glowing objects floated silently across the sky. Mechanical noises, untraceable in origin, echoed from deep underground. Their cattle began disappearing without explanation. Some were found later, but not in one piece. However, the incident that truly broke Terry's patience was the horrific death of the family's 3 loyal hunting dogs. One night, a blue orb, small like a tennis ball but emitting a high-pitched hum, appeared near the edge of the woods. The dogs immediately gave chase. Terry let them go, thinking it was harmless. But the next morning, he and his son found only 3 blackened heaps of flesh still smoldering in the grass. After more than a year of living under constant surveillance and unseen assaults, the Sherman family teetered on the brink of collapse. They had lost more than a dozen cattle, costing tens of thousands of dollars. But more than that, they had lost their sense of peace. The children's performance in school began to decline. Gwen lost her job at the bank due to frequent absences from exhaustion. The entire family resorted to sleeping together in one room because the strange phenomena never stopped circling them. By 1996, as the Sherman family was nearing collapse under the weight of the strange events on their ranch, a man named Robert Bigelow entered the picture. He was an American billionaire, known for his deep interest in unexplained phenomena that science had yet to account for. After reading a news article about Skinwalker Ranch, he made the decision to purchase the entire property and launch a formal investigation. Bigelow founded a special research unit called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science. This was a team made up of scientists, including PhDs in physics, biology, psychology, veterinary science, and even former military personnel. These were not people prone to superstition. On the contrary, they were selected precisely for their critical thinking and commitment to seeking rational scientific explanations. From the moment they arrived on the ranch, the NIDS team began a comprehensive series of tests, collecting samples of soil, water, and air, and measuring everything from electromagnetic waves to infrasound and magnetic fields. They constructed observation towers, installed infrared cameras, and deployed continuous video surveillance around the clock. Their mission was to uncover the source behind the bizarre occurrences the Shermans had experienced. But what they discovered would unsettle even the most hardened skeptics among them. One of the most shocking incidents occurred when 4 of Terry's large bulls vanished without a trace from their locked pen. The gate remained secured, showing no signs of forced entry. After hours of frantic searching, the team eventually found all 4 animals crammed inside an old trailer container. The door of the container had been locked for years, covered in cobwebs. No one could explain how the animals had been relocated inside. On another night, researchers observed a strange light hovering above the field. Through infrared binoculars, they saw what looked like a portal opening in mid-air. From within it, a pitch-black, faceless entity crawled out and slithered across the ground as if surveying the area. But it wasn't just strange visuals. The team also reported hearing odd subterranean noises, detecting pungent musky odors, and experiencing areas where the magnetic field fluctuated abruptly. On numerous occasions, they witnessed triangular-shaped craft floating silently through the sky. These objects appeared to be aware of the researchers and seemed to evade the cameras with eerie precision. Their high-tech equipment frequently malfunctioned at critical moments, and anomalies always seemed to unfold just outside the range of surveillance. After months of diligent observation and data collection, the scientists were forced to admit something deeply unsettling. There was indeed something very strange at Skinwalker Ranch, and whatever it was, it clearly did not want to be discovered. The previous owners of Skinwalker Ranch, Kenneth and Edith Myers, had lived on the property for nearly 60 years, but never once did they publicly speak of anything strange about the land. Yet according to neighbors, close friends, and former ranch hands, the truth may have been far more complicated. One of the earliest unsettling stories came from the winter of 1948. As the sky darkened and a heavy snowstorm began to blanket the land in white, Kenneth Myers heard a knock at the door. When he stepped outside, he saw a man standing about 10 feet away, dressed in a long black coat and wearing a wide-brimmed hat. The stranger said he was from the sheriff's office and that he was simply checking to make sure the family was safe during the blizzard. But when Myers turned back to invite him in for coffee, the man had vanished. The footprints in the snow led to the front gate and disappeared. Myers silently gazed into the thick fog, closed the door, and let out a quiet sigh. Dear God, this land is cursed. But that story was just one piece of a much larger chain of incidents that the Myers family quietly endured. In 1975, a young ranch hand named Jimmy Spears vanished while repairing a fence on the far edge of the property. 3 days later, he was found in a state of panic and with no memory of what had happened. Jimmy recalled working in the early afternoon and then waking up 3 days later in a trance-like state behind an abandoned house on the ranch. He left shortly after, saying that every night since he had dreamed of being buried alive beneath the floorboards of that same old house, a dream that repeated itself as if it were something he had truly experienced. Another strange case involved 2 young women from the Myers family. Around 11 p.m., while driving back to the ranch, they were followed by flashing red and blue lights, what appeared to be a police vehicle in pursuit. But the next thing they remembered, it was daylight. They awoke sitting inside the car, parked atop a mesa, a flat-topped rock formation with no roads leading up and completely inaccessible by a normal vehicle. Their car had to be extracted using specialized towing equipment, a process that took 6 hours. Neither of the two women could recall how they had gotten up there. Even local law enforcement had encountered inexplicable things. A former deputy sheriff named Chris Porritt, who was often called to the ranch by the Myers family for incidents of missing livestock, once found 2 dead cattle lying near the main house. The corpses had been dissected with surgical precision, their reproductive organs removed and stacked neatly behind them. Nearby, he observed a 23-foot-long depression in the grass, a shape that matched exactly what a cigar-shaped flying object might leave upon landing. In another incident, 3 calves disappeared without a trace. After a full day of searching, they were found locked inside a small storage shed. They remained motionless until someone splashed cold water on them, at which point they suddenly snapped out of their stupor and bolted. The door to the shed had been latched shut, covered in cobwebs, and no one could explain how the animals had ended up inside. But perhaps the most chilling account came from a Ute boy named Roland McCook. In 1981, while hunting near the mesa close to the ranch, Roland and a friend took shelter from the rain in an abandoned cabin. They heard strange noises, then saw fresh human-like footprints in the snow. From the shadows, a creature nearly 8 feet tall emerged, a figure with the body of a man and the head of a wolf, and it growled at them. The boys fired their rifles in fear, and the creature fled into the woods. But Roland later claimed that ever since that day he heard scratching at his windows at night, along with faint growling noises just outside his home. 4 decades have passed, and still, he says, the nightmares have never left him. As the stories from Skinwalker Ranch began spreading beyond the Winta Basin, the first reaction many people had was that it must all be a hoax. A popular theory suggested that the Sherman family had fabricated the entire phenomenon in order to inflate the property's value and escape from what had become a failed investment. After all, they had lost numerous cattle and suffered severe financial damage, and this could have been a clever way to attract a buyer. But that theory quickly collapsed under the weight of hundreds of independent eyewitness accounts describing inexplicable events. Beyond that, reports of supernatural phenomena in the region predate the Shermans by generations. Stories of the Skinwalker have long circulated among the local indigenous tribes. These communities believe that the land was cursed following a violent conflict with the Ute people, and that supernatural beings, birthed from dark magic, have roamed the area ever since, passing from generation to generation. But even ancient folklore couldn't account for everything. The intelligent orbs of light, the glowing aerial craft, and the disappearances marked by signs of instantaneous relocation all seem to defy the boundaries of cultural myth. From this arose a more audacious theory. What if the government was using Skinwalker Ranch to test classified technologies? Terry Sherman himself had suspected this early on, wondering whether he and his family had unknowingly become test subjects in some covert experimental program. When Robert Bigelow withdrew from Skinwalker Ranch in 2016, many assumed the curtain had finally fallen on the mystery surrounding the property, but the truth was quite the opposite. Despite nearly a decade of rigorous investigation by the NIDS team, no definitive answers were ever found, and the strange occurrences did not cease. One theory, however, has begun to gain more serious traction within the research community. Skinwalker Ranch may not be unique. All across the globe, from the depths of the Amazon rainforest to the desolate plains of Siberia, from the Andes Mountains in Peru to the high plateaus of Tibet, there have been reports of similar hotspots, places where space, time, and human perception appear to bend under the influence of some unknown force or intelligence. Researchers have begun referring to these locations as reality leak zones, areas where our dimensional fabric may be warped, overlapped, or infiltrated by a different form of existence, and Skinwalker Ranch may be only one of many. If today's story made you reflect or reminded you of strange things you've heard before, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to continue this journey into the world's unsolved mysteries, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next video.